Hey there everybody, how you doing? It's your old pal Cape Joel back again for another installment of The Story So Far, a series I've done so many times now I feel like it could really use its own special title card and logo. For those who don't know, The Story So Far is a show where I take a closer, more complete, more in-depth look at comic book storylines that have finished up so I can give you my thoughts, my insight, and maybe talk a little bit about how this story is impacting stories that are going on right now. And I couldn't think of a better one to talk about today. I am talking about Geoff Johns' Teen Titans, Titans of Tomorrow, from the collected volume, from his collected fourth volume of his 2003 Teen Titans run, The Future Is Now. Why is this story important? Well, I'll tell you all about it. You see, if you were reading DC Comics in 2017, I'm sure you'll be aware that one of the big breakout characters was Tim Drake. No, not the main universe Tim Drake, granted he did have a pretty good year, what with dying and coming back to life and everything. No, I'm talking about the older time-traveling Tim Drake, the older time-traveling, gun-toting Tim Drake to be exact. He's the character that premiered in this story, he's the character that came back in A Lonely Place of Living, and was more or less the villain of the big Super Sons Teen Titans crossover that was Super Sons of Tomorrow. But it's this story right here that he and indeed his dark alternate timeline came from. So with that out of the way, let's hop into the story, shall we? Now, Titans of Tomorrow is actually the second part of Volume 4 of Geoff Johns' Teen Titans series. You didn't miss a whole lot in the first part. Basically, it was a time-traveling adventure where Connor Kent the Superboy and the rest of the team got involved with the Legion of Superheroes, fighting a threat that was going on in the future. And when all that was said and done, they needed to make their way back to the past. In doing so, they completely missed the mark, which happens all too often in time travel fiction, wouldn't you agree? And they end up launched 10 years into the future, 10 years into their own future, actually. Now, the comic actually does something kind of clever and tries to misdirect you at first, because as the reader, you don't know how far in the future we are, and you don't know how much things have changed. One of the most, shocking images that we get to see right away is a gun-toting Batman going around and wasting fools like the Joker's daughter, and we figure, oh, have we gone to, maybe an alternate universe where the Justice League is evil? But no, not only that, this isn't the Justice League we're dealing with, these are the Teen Titans all grown up, and they try and go back to their base of operation, they try and go back to the tower, only everything is slightly off, everything is slightly wrong, and there's a bunch of statues at Titan's Tower dedicated to people that they never ever in a million years thought could get their own statues. Lex Luthor has a statue, Ares has a statue, and that freaks our young heroes right the hell out. The kids quickly end up coming face to face with their older adult counterparts, and a fight breaks out, as it always does in these types of stories, but it's a really good opportunity to showcase how these older Titans are different. For one, they've completely changed their costumes and usurped more or less the Justice League position, with Superboy now going as Superman, and etc, etc. Beast Boy has embraced more of his beast heritage. He doesn't wear clothes anymore, he's just, fully gone feral now. He's not even pretending to try and be human anymore. Same with Raven. She seems to have thrown away a lot of her humanity. She's going by Dark Raven now, and she just has no problem using her powers to hurt people, where before she would kind of want to pull her punches. Eventually, the teams decide to sit down and talk things out once they realize that they're not imposters and that this is a time travel thing you're dealing with here. Again, the Titans of Tomorrow, evil but sensible, is kind of their modus operandi. And the deal is that they can't fight with their younger counterparts even if they wanted to, because to do so would risk the future that they've worked so hard to build. A future wherein all crime has been defeated and people are living semi-happily, even if to do so they've completely cut the United States in half, and it's implied that they're, using intimidation tactics and magic and all sorts of other things to suppress people's free will. So, it's a dark dystopian future that we're living. What's interesting about this story, too, is that it doesn't lead to the whole big kind of like, oh, we gotta defeat these guys and overcome them and save the future thing. Both groups are kind of in agreement where it's like, look, we really can't know too much about each other and we really should stop interacting with each other. We just gotta send you kids home right quick. But we also need to wipe your memories because, again, We want to protect our future, even if it's a dark future. You kids can't know what's going on. And they would have gotten away with it too if they weren't so devil-may-care about torturing Deathstroke. The young Teen Titans realize that they can make a lot of concessions, but, for a group of people who are torturing, yeah, that's most certainly not good. They're also, really shocked and disgusted at the idea that they could ever have fallen so far. In only a decade, too. It's only 10 years in the future, and they've already gone to this really dark, messed up place. No one feels this harder than Tim Drake, who really has kind of a one-on-one with the Batman of tomorrow, with his older self, because Tim never really saw himself becoming Batman, never really saw himself wanting the job, and his older self, is really cruel and, really prods him and says, oh, sure, you don't want it now, but it will fall to you, and, all of this can be yours, and all of this is your fault in a way. Also, too, in an interesting note, this evil Batman of tomorrow makes use of a gun, but not just any gun, it's the gun that killed the Wayne family, and I think it's funny that Jeff Johns wrote this, and you'll also have such a big hand in writing Flashpoint, because that darker, more gritty Batman also made use of the guns that killed the Waynes, and it's funny, a lot of ideas here in Titans of Tomorrow would be reused elsewhere, so it's fun to think that this was the first time you saw it. The whole, evil Justice League, they, didn't just flip a switch and become evil overnight, their morals kind of degraded over time. You love that in Injustice? Well, this story did it first. This showdown between old and young Tim is, for all intents and purposes, kind of the big, showy centerpiece of this story, and kind of more than anything does a good job trying to hit home what this story is about, and that is, if you could talk to yourself, if you could talk to your young self, would you like, would that young self like the person you've become, and vice versa? Because, older, eviler Tim is like, you kids have no idea what's coming to you. You have no idea the hard choices we had to make as adults just to try and keep the world safe, to try and be better than the heroes that we were sidekicks to. He even takes him to, the Wayne family graveyard and shows off, here are all the people who died. Here are all the people who didn't make it. I did, I'm a survivor. In fact, they even implied that Tim, some of these people didn't die of natural causes, that maybe Tim killed some of these people. Another idea that Tynion and Tomasi and everyone would really, seize on when they would go back to this character all those years later. The Teen Titans are ultimately able to shake the evil Titans of tomorrow, and they try and get a hold of the Cosmic Treadmill in hopes that Bart Allen can use it to send him back. And of course, to do so, they have to go to the Flash Museum. And again, this is a Jeff Johns story. Jeff Johns loves the Flash so much, so we're gonna get a whole extended scene in the Flash Museum where we can kind of give, big sloppy love letter kisses to the Flash lore and the Flash history, which, hey, I enjoy the Flash too, so I enjoyed this scene very much. It's while escaping the Flash Museum, the Teen Titans come face to face with essentially the rebel resistance to the evil Titans of tomorrow. It's the Titans West team led by a much older Cyborg. Once again, the younger, more idealistic teens are shocked at the idea that, wait, not only are we evil in the future, but we didn't even stay friends in the future, we're at each other's throats. This is terrible, man. We never wanted to grow up, and now we gotta grow up fast and quite possibly the worst way possible. The big finale of the story includes the Teen Titans and the Titans West all joining forces to raid the Batcave and get the Cosmic Treadmill, which of course Batman was keeping, because why wouldn't he be keeping it? This leads to a big fight between everyone else. You got Superboy trying to duke it out with his older counterpart, saying that he doesn't have the right to wear that S, what with the way he's been acting. Tim Drake gets into both a, moral and physical battle with his older Batman self, saying, the big difference between us, is we didn't lose hope yet, we didn't try and take the easy way out, we're still heroes, and, when we go back in time, we are going to try and set things right. Another thing about this story is that they drop a lot of references to the then upcoming Identity Crisis, saying, what tore them apart happened in Identity Crisis, and when they do get home, the whole 20th issue, the whole, last issue of this arc is kind of like a fallout to the Titans of Tomorrow story, but it's also kind of like a letting go issue for this run because the Titans team book would have been reworked after this. Starfire decides to leave, what with seeing, a dark future where she wasn't in it and where her and Nightwing weren't together. She wants to go fix that. A bunch of the other Titans are deciding that they're either going to leave or they're going to greatly rework their life. It's also a big issue dedicated to Tim Drake dealing with the death of his father, who of course died as a part of Identity Crisis. One of the more controversial aspects of Identity Crisis, actually. So, his whole big arc in that is, even just opening up to his team about his tragedy, and it's implied like, oh, is this the thing that sets, the downfall of the Titans? Is this how they're gonna fall and fall hard? A lot of this would get they would go back to it and they would address it. Some of it they wouldn't. James Tynion, who took the reins of the evil Tim Drake of the future in A Lonely Place of Living, and, Peter Tomasi and everyone else who took the reins of the character in Super Sons of Tomorrow. This isn't really the reason they fell apart, but it is something they definitely built on. It was an idea that was so cool and interesting, but also vague enough that they would be allowed to build on it and do more stuff with it. Of course, if you read Super Sons of Tomorrow, the Batman of Tomorrow didn't stay Batman of Tomorrow, and thank God, because it's really confusing and real mouthful to have to call him Batman of Tomorrow. He became Savior, and maybe he wasn't a bad guy at the end of that story. I don't know. There'd be a sequel to this one a couple years later, like around issue 50 of Jeff Johns' Titans book. Or no, I don't think Jeff Johns wrote that one, but there'd be a sequel series called The Titans of Today, and if people liked this insight, I might go back and talk about that one. But yeah, that's Teen Titans, Titans of Tomorrow, everyone. It's a fun, interesting little time-hopping story. It's interesting to see how a lot of the ideas and concepts brought up in here would, be used much, much later in DC Rebirth. I think it certainly helps that Jeff Johns wrote this story, and Jeff Johns is such a major architect of stories going on currently in DC Comics. It's definitely a nice little snapshot, too, of the Teen Titans team at the time. They haven't looked like this in a long time. The team's been very different in makeup and also, kind of like mission statements. So it was fun to go back and revisit this story. It still looks great. It's a really great looking story there. A lot of the action scenes are really cool with all the different heroes going off at the same time. I liked this one, and I hope you did too. So that's the story so far, everyone. Doing a much older story this time than we've done before, but I hope this one granted you a little better understanding of what's going on in DC Rebirth right now. One of the more interesting, more complicated antagonists that they've had in the evil Tim Drake of the future. So that'll just about do it for me, everyone. This has been Cape Joel. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be always sure to like, subscribe, and favorite. It helps me out a whole lot, and I will be back again later. But before I go, if there's a particular story you would like to see me take a closer look at in the story so far, be sure to also tell me down in the description, and I will consider it. So with that, everyone, bye-bye.